Our nation, our islands, our games. After a long 20-plus years, the Bahamas Games are back. Last week, star athletes from across the Bahamas put their best efforts into the 2023 Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games and the making of what may be the future of sports in the Bahamas. Martin Lundy, chairman of the Bahamas Games Secretariat, said that the intent was to revive the Bahamas Games at the right moment, and that right moment is our 50th anniversary in 2023, thus the celebration of the Golden Jubilee Games. With the goal to create inclusivity among those in the Bahamas, a Bahamas Games Secretariat was formed from volunteers of sporting federations and associations from around the country. Competition was created in roughly 14 disciplines, allowing about 3,000 athletes from roughly 10 islands and groupings of islands to perform. The Golden Jubilee Games captured the stage from July 7th through the 15th, giving us insight into what we as a people are capable of and how talented athletes are all over the Bahamas. The medals say it all. With 2023 now in the history books, 2026 is currently being planned. Our guests tonight include some of the most influential players in the making of the Jubilee Games a success. We'll delve into the efforts that brought us success and, more importantly, how we will utilize some of these excellent performances from each individual islands in the future. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our topic tonight, the Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games. On the Record continues on the other side of this break. You're watching On the Record, and welcome back. Our discussion tonight puts a spotlight on this past 2023 Olympic-style Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games, where athletes from all over the Bahamas showed out in a variety of categories, inclusive of track and field, basketball, tennis, swimming, powerlifting, sailing, golf, and much more. I'm excited to welcome to our discussion tonight the Minister responsible for Youth, Sports and Culture, Minister Mario Boleg, who is no stranger to us here on the show, as well as the Director of Sports at the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Kelsey Sills. Welcome to On the Record. Minister, welcome back. Kelsey, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Kelsey and I go way back, so we have a little love fest going on here, Minister, so you gotta excuse us. Before we get started, though, let's take a look at a short clip from Prime Minister Philip Davis at the opening of the recent Bahamas Games.
As we stand on this significant threshold, I can't help but look back at the visionary who set the wheels of this great institution in motion. Our friend, the late Peter Bethel, had the foresight to see the remarkable unifying power of sports. He knew that through sports, we could bring our people together, bridge our differences, and instill a sense of shared pride and purpose. Today, we are reigniting these games in his honor, and in his vision is more alive than ever.
All right, I have to ask, well, first of all, congratulations. Have you slept yet?
No.
I'm putting in for vacations.
I'm presently on vacation and
All
still
right.
trying to get
Well,
some
we
rest.
thank you for coming in off of vacation to help us with this. The last Bahamas Games were in 2001, some 22 years. What inspired the reopening and the resurgence of these games?
Well, understanding the purpose of the games, the initial purpose was to unite the country together through the various sporting disciplines and try to get people to know their fellow Bahamians in the various family islands. And we know what the power of sports can do for a nation. And so that was something that we put in our blueprint for change, and we wanted to bring things back that united this country before. And understanding that there's a whole generation that never saw this. Only us who was around, and so we believe that this newer generation needs to have a feel, a touch of what the Bahama Games is all about. And I can tell you to this day, I'm being asked to have it every year, but they must understand we can't do so. But it's happy that the way they welcome it and they enjoy it, and their experience from it is one that will live on for them forever.
When you started the planning of these games, you must have known initially that it was going to coincide with the 50th independence celebrations. Why host it alongside the 50th anniversary?
Well, the games were always held during the Independence Week, and so knowing that we were going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary, we decided to keep it there. We did not anticipate this amount of activities that would have been taking place with the Secretariat of the 50th, but when we did discover that, we decided that, we would come together collaboratively and ensure that there was no clash, even though for some Bahamians they might have thought it was a little too much to attend all of these events. But at the end of the day, we know that those sports enthusiasts would have wanted to ensure that these games were attended to and partake for the athletes. And so it all balanced out. Those who wanted to put on the gown and the suits and want to go to the ball, they went. Those who wanted to go to the field in the basketball court or the softball field, they were there. And so I think it brought a sense of activity and belongings to everybody in all aspects, which they would want to be a part of.
We did have blackout dates. When I put the schedule together, I made sure, sit down and speak with the Independent Secretariat to make sure that they knew that our blackout dates would not affect them. So when the Prime Minister had his ball, we stopped all activities at a certain time. We stopped all activities for the opening ceremony. With all sporting activities stopped at 3 o'clock. So everybody was able to attend the opening ceremony. And then on July 9th, so everyone was able to go to the fort. We stopped all activities around about 5, 6 o'clock, and we got police escort for those persons who were living closer to the fort, So everyone was able to partake in all of the festivities. It was sports, and then it was culture. So it was a big explosion of Bahamian pride.
And I would think that a lot of the athletes from those islands, coaches, etc.,
they loved it.
Who normally would not get to see
the opportunity,
the activities in New Providence,
experience
got to
the
participate.
fort.
Yeah,
I can tell you this is the reason why sailing was in New Providence. Sailing was scheduled to be in North Andros, but the sailors said no. This is a family time, and all of our family wants to be in Nassau for the 50th celebration. So they came back to us and say, we won't sail, we want to go to Nassau. So we had to bring the sailing back to New
About
Providence.
5 days before.
Yeah, so but you couldn't blame them because normally they would have been the family lines. They wouldn't experience what the celebration is all about. So, we entertain them.
All right. In the Prime Minister's remarks, he mentioned the architect of the Bahamas Games and even naming the games in his honor. And what was it like for you personally to be able to revive that vision? A vision, to be very honest, I remember when it first started, people doubted that it would even happen back then.
But people doubted that it would even happen last week.
That's why I started at that point.
It was a large, momentous, it was a huge task to get these games off. I've got calls over and over and said, I think we should postpone the games. I think we should push it back. There's not sufficient time to get it ready and all of that. And Jerome, at some point, you have to go with your gut feelings. And when you're a leader, you have to make a decision. Being successful or fail, I decided, after having a conversation with the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister and some colleagues, whom at that sometimes was even saying to me, maybe we should look at pushing it back. And, before you do anything, I always believe you go to the Lord in prayer. And I pray about it, and I went back to the Prime Minister the next day. I said, no, we're going to have the games. The games, we're going to pull this off. And then you strategically start moving bodies here and there who you think could get it done. And being a former president of a federation, understanding the whole events at this magnitude and having persons like the director here, along with Romel Knowles, who being the president of the Olympic Committee, who understand what it is to hold these events, and some of his executives and other federations, executives and presidents coming on board, we felt we could have got it done. And we moved forward, and we said, if we meet a bump in the road, we're going to go over it and continue moving and make sure that, again, this was for the young people, the new generation, to get the experience. And anything that needs to be corrected for the next one, we have to experience those bumps in order for us to prove it moving forward. So you have to go.
I want to talk about some of the disciplines this year and how were they chosen and why.
Well, when I was tasked in putting the schedule together, Romel sat in my office and he was like, whatever you decide on, this is what we're going to go with. So we wanted an Olympic-style field because, the Bahamas will lead to road to Paris. The Bahamas Games is the initial one, and then we have World Relays, and then it's Paris. So a lot of people won't be able, our athletes don't excel to that Olympic level.
Sure.
So we are able to give them that Olympic-style game and feel. That's what we wanted. That was the general idea of this year's Bahamas Games. So what we did, we staggered the games. Instead of having all of the athletes come in at one time, we knew that we were competing with the Independence Celebration and also to the tourist market. So we had to stagger it, and we wanted a big marketing campaign to let them know that the Bahamas Games was back, the flames, the baton. Actually, we moved away from the flames, and we used the baton, which also ties now in with the World Relays.
Okay.
So
I wondered about that.
Yes, everything comes with a theme. And so our first initial thought was maybe we should have 7 games at the top and then the 7 at the bottom. So we ran into a problem with 1 or 2 of the federations, so we were able to remove them quickly. But that made us stagger it even better, where we had swimming, because if you look at the Olympic style in the schedule, swimming is always at the top of the games, and track and field always closes out. However, the decision was, should we put softball on top or baseball? And I am so happy that we went with softball to the bottom, because it actually gave us more persons in the arenas. A lot of people were competing with the Independence, so we weren't able to have a full arena for baseball, but we were able to have a full arena for softball. So I was happy for that.
How did you, though, decide on the other sports? People that come to track, swimming, baseball, softball, volleyball, as you know, is very popular. But there were some other sports that I saw on the schedule, and I
Once
thought,
an
this is
athlete,
interesting.
always an athlete.
Yeah.
Once a sports fanatic, you'll always be a sports fanatic. It doesn't matter if you're, even edu-karting,
Yes.
an exhibition sport, had fans out. Because
So for those who don't know what edu-karting is, let's back. I always like to teach people on the show. So what is edu-karting?
edu-karting is similar to the Formula One races, but they're in a smaller car, go-kart, and you know how you'll have the tires, you'll have the track lined up, but we don't have an official track. So we had a makeshift track on the northern end of the stadium. Everyone's familiar with the road traffic. So cycling started at road traffic, and then edu-karting was at the other end. So you had 2 activities you could bounce from, and that was the idea. If you didn't want to stay at baseball, swimming, you could still go to the other sports. So edu-karting, I believe they got off with a big bang. You should be able to see them in the next hosting. They actually came back from Paris, I think, a year ago. So they did have a good showing in Paris as well. So we're getting on the map with that particular sport.
Minister, for you, you're looking at all of these disciplines, all of the participation. I'm going to tell you, one day I went to the gymnasium to take something to my team, and some friends who had just competed in tennis from Harbor Island needed a ride back to the hotel, and I said, "Sure, I'll give you a ride." And I thought, people in Harbor Island playing tennis. It's just that was an aha moment for me, And so I have to ask, in your experience, did you realize how many different disciplines are happening around the country, or did you sort of always know that there was this great amount of interest and participation?
Most definitely, and that's the reason why we chose these disciplines. And the intent in the next game is to add more disciplines. You know, we want to add more disciplines like dart,
Archery.
dominoes, archery, pool. You know, and one of the best pool rooms or hall, whatever you want to call it, in this country is in Long Island.
Really?
World class.
And
World class.
tennis was won by Andros. So,
Really?
Andros won.
This is quite a learning experience.
So, and Andres also run, I made mention in the House of Assembly when I did my communication yesterday that the Andres was the pros on the crabgrass because they won golf.
Yep.
So that tells you, I said we didn't put the greens, they put, the crabgrass.
Yes,
we
I know,
call it.
very well.
But
Wow.
definitely what it brought to attention is we wanted to find those diamonds in the rough, those untapped talents in the family islands that persons does not know exist, and we always look for national teams within New Providence and Grand Bahama, and we want to move away from that. And that's why the Prime Minister has committed assisting me in ensuring that we put some facilities, upgrade all of these facilities in the family islands. Cat Islands is about to be wrapped up, and then we want to move into Abaco next, in Denny Lucha, Long Island, and so forth. Because we do believe if we build it, not only would they come, but we will develop much more athletes, and we want to be able to sustain our place in the world as the best little country in the world per capita when it comes to Olympic. And the only way we can do that is we got to continue to develop.
I want to put in a plug for my friends at the Equestrian Federation to make sure the next games we have some equestrians that compete as well. And, again, I think people don't always understand or appreciate the diversity of the disciplines in this country.
Yeah, but what happens too with the decision making on the disciplines that are chosen is we want all federations to try and take the development of their discipline to the family islands so we can have a greater participation.
Okay.
And so equestrian, I have no problems assisting them getting to the family islands. We just want them to make sure that we develop.
Right.
Even if we don't get to the family islands, even if we find some family islanders here resides in New Providence,
Right. Yeah, to
who wants
represent.
to, get in it.
So this
Sure.
year we did away with the draft. In the past hostings, we were able to have a draft where only Grand Bahama and New Providence would be able to get the first selection of the top players. So we said, okay, we haven't had a Bahamas game since so long. We don't want to give the two top islands an advantage. So we said, if you're from Abaco and if you're from Andros, just go and play for your island. Represent your family heritage.
That's what I was going to ask.
That made the game special.
You don't have to physically reside, but once you have some heritage.
Yes.
You can go back.
You can be a part of
so I'm going to
that
be on the
island.
equestrian team for Long Island.
For what island?
Long Island.
Just as long as you don't get in the boat.
No, I understand the sailing. Just before we go into our first break, I know that there was a lot in the media because we were talking about it and all the media houses were talking about it. But I wonder, do you think honestly it was advertised enough and people knew enough about it to come out and support like they could have, or could more have been done?
Definitely more could have been done, but I wouldn't say use it as an excuse. But the thing is, we had so many going on because we had just came off Carifta. While Carifta was being promoted, we didn't want to promote the Bahama Games at the same time, and so that put Bahama Games on the Martin Tell. Carifta had finished, and then when Carifta finished, we had about three weeks to really get out there and push the Bahama Games. And the same thing now, Bahama Games is finished.
We have triathlon, Carifta Triathlon coming up.
Next one.
In a
We
couple
also got to start promoting swimming, Carifta for next year. And the World Relays. So we have to be careful how we
It's a busy couple of months
push them out of there.
leading up to next year for us.
I have to commend and applaud you because I remember, a former minister of sports saying sports unites a nation.
It does.
And it is so true that we come together in a spirit of camaraderie. And you're right. I mean, people came from islands and participated who never would have gotten the opportunity, which brings me to my next question. How did you qualify? Was there, who was allowed to compete?
Anybody, as long as you met that criteria, the age standing. We know that swimming, a number of our swimmers are younger, so we had to put an age cap on those. So we went from 11, instead of the 9 and the 7 division, we said, okay, you can go from 11 and up. So What sport I was most proud of was track and field. We weren't able to have a number of our elite athletes participate, but we had athletes, the promising athletes. So you now see the
tell you, that's a
future
good
of
thing.
track and field.
I think because you did not have the elite
Right.
athletes,
So other
it made it
persons
a little more
were able to
competitive.
shine.
Who go run against Shawnee? Come on, man.
I tried once.
But I honestly think that it worked.
Yes, so
Yeah, it did.
a number of our younger talent was exposed, especially those student athletes coming in from the Family Islands. You would have never thought Sydney Clark and her sister paired up in tennis to win for Andros. That's how important it was. She's one of the top junior players who could have easily played for New Providence.
Right. She played.
Columbus Isles won volleyball women.
Yeah. I think just listening to the stories of the gold medal games, and even the Deputy Prime Minister speaking about Exuma winning, winning basketball. I was so proud to hear that because it wasn't the dominance of Grand Bahama and New Providence. But we can talk about that row later. When we come back, we're going to delve into the planning process of a successful event like this. There's a lot more to come on the record right after this. You're watching On the Record. Welcome back. Tonight we're discussing the Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games. Our guest is Minister Mario Boleg and Kelsey Sills. Let's jump right back into our discussion. As we went into the break, I told you we were going to ask about who won. You know, we've had a big war in the newsroom with our Grand Bahama folks versus New Providence and even some Abaco folks. And I just want to precede it by saying it was such a healthy banter within the group to be able to say, well, we won this, we're leading here, we got more goals here. And I told Grandmama, yeah, be waiting for you all on the track. But you know, one of the things that you said that there was not a declared winner. Why?
No, because we thought that just bringing the game back after 22 years will take away from the spirit and the success of the Family Islands who would have been successful in their various disciplines. Because at the end of the day, it's again uniting the nation together through sports, but at the same time, we want to continue to encourage the development of sports in all the various Family Islands. And once we're able to highlight Exuma winning women's basketball, Columbus Isles winning women's volleyball, you know, just be able to, Andros winning golf, just be able to highlight those Family Islands and the success, Lucho Men's men's basketball and softball. You want to be able to, the Family Islands want to feel that they are appreciative and us. It's not like you running against United States and Canada, you know, the little Bahamas, and so we need a few. And so we want everyone to feel accomplished, and as you could say, the entire nation was pulling for that island of their descent and wherever they was from, and so everybody felt that sense of belonging and Bahamian pride. I haven't seen more patriotism than we have seen since the 50th anniversary, as we've seen also in the Bahama Games in this 50th year of celebration.
People really got into, you figured out where people's heritage was.
Exactly.
Because people were really lining up behind the islands of their heritage. You know, and that's very important because Nassau and Grand Bahama are really where the population shift is. But we've all come from somewhere.
Everyone.
We had a little challenge with the Cricket Island team, and they would have called me like, I think 2 or 3 days before travel, because they weren't able to get all of their athletes in. And the guy who's saying, Mama Sills, we gotta win this. I have to have this team here. This is my puzzle. You can't leave one. I said, sir, I'm gonna try my best. No, Miss Sills, if you gotta charter that plane, bring us in, bring us in. I said, but you're a combination. I don't care, Cricket Island can win. I said, Cricket Island cannot just win. Mike Cal has to win. Oh, don't worry about that. We have Auckland's people on this. But this is one particular team that they just wanted the members of Cricket. You don't understand. There's a sense of pride, Danya. We coming back with a medal. I said, okay, sir. I called him back. I said, you're approved to get the charter. You can come in. Come. He was so excited.
When you hear stories like that, you realize the passion and the excitement. And sometimes I think that's lost on people who are not in it. Because I'll have to be very honest, for me, just as an observer, I was surprised at the number of athletes that we had participating. Just give us a number and how you were able to accommodate all those athletes.
We had 4,000 athletes,
Wow.
coaches, officials, volunteers over the course of 11 days. So what helped was the staggering of the games, where we would have only had persons who would have competed in swimming in the hotels at that time. So if you were in swimming, baseball, volleyball, I think softball,
That's all.
not softball, sorry, on the top of the chart, you were only allowed in the hotels at that time.
Okay.
So that gave us some rooms, the accommodations, because Breezes was one of the hotels of choice.
Right.
That hotel could only hold about 350, gave us 350 rooms, so we had to go to Courtyard Marriott for the younger persons. So economically, everyone actually benefited. But in terms of those athletes and coaches coming in, 4,000 persons, 2,500 meals per day, that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And plus you had to make sure you get transportation, you had to make sure you get medical. Thank you, Colina, so much for stepping up to the plate for the $5,000 insurance. Everyone in this Bahamas played a role, and I'm so grateful for them.
So it wasn't like in the Olympic Village where if you come for your event at the end, you get to stay for the whole time you came in for the period of time
That you were
Okay, and that was
participating.
We didn't have enough room nights.
Yeah.
And so that tells us, even as a little nation, that we didn't even have enough room nights for a domestic
Our own
economic
people.
boost
Yeah.
of our own people holding our own games. So we need to do much more in order for us to be able to host larger games. I'm going to switch a bit to the World Relays
Sure.
because while I'll springboard of that, every country around the world, in order for you to qualify to go to Olympics, you got to come to the Bahamas
For the
to compete
relays.
in the World Relays.
really
You can imagine the amount of persons that is going to already start booking to come to the Bahamas to watch their family member or friends compete. The media coverage that we're going to get, we're going to have to put extra seating in the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium in order for us to even allow our own people to be able to come and watch these games. And this is one that's going to be when those tickets goes for sale. Either you buy or you look on the outside or watch it on television.
When are the games again for the people, the World Relays?
The World Games are going to be early May.
May 4th, 5th.
May 4th and 5th next year.
Okay, so next May, we got some time to get ready. But, looking ahead, and it happens in many other places, are we looking at possibly, outside of just using the hotels, looking at some other venues as a games village where we house athletes? Because I know sometimes in other countries you'll see they will use other sites as a games village. Or you think we're just going to continue to stick with hotels?
Well, when people come to the Bahamas, they say we do it better than anyone else. You go to some of the other Caribbean countries and you end up finding yourself staying in college dorms and stuff, and which would be a lower level of standard for athletes at this level.
Sure.
And so, we're not going to go to that level. We're going to continue hoping that we can find Airbnbs or whatever it may be and find these various hotels, even the ones over Paradise Island, that will probably give us a preferable rate that would allow us to be able to afford some of these places being Games Village. But, we just do it. We do it the best we can when it comes to the Bahamas.
Sure,
That's why athletes and coaches from around the world, anytime we host an event, they say, "Bah." Before you say "bah," they say, "Let's go there."
And there's an expectation of a particular standard when they
Yes.
come here,
Obviously.
and that is the truth. And I don't know if that's our gift or our curse. Minister in June, you mentioned that the Davis administration intended to spend about $4.2 million to host these games. Roughly how much did the games end up costing us?
The games are going to cost us more than $4.2 million. We would have spent that amount this far. But of course, as we wrap up the games and we see some expense coming forward, I anticipate we will probably spend up to about $8 million. And so, again, some might look at the dollar value that is being spent, but the investment in your own people should be, no true value should be placed on that.
Which brings me to my next question. Is you're talking almost double what would have been the projected cost. How do you now, though, justify that to the Bahamian people who say, wait a minute, this is double what it's cost? Was it really worth the $8 million?
If you ask the vendors the over 1,000 vendors and the persons around town who would feel the economic impact. You look at the emotional impact that would have been displayed on Bahamians. You find some Bahamians forgot we had Dorian, they forgot we had COVID. And when you look at that impact that it tells us as a human being and the feeling that the games would have brought to us as a people, then that tells you where that money was spent, and that's what it's all about, making our people feel as though that it's all about them, and that's what it's all about.
Did corporate Bahamas play a role in any of this? What kind of sponsorship did you receive, and is there, are you looking at that as a model going forward? Because $8 million that's not a little bit of money.
No.
But how are you looking to offset that going forward?
We should have had corporate sponsorship involved much earlier, but they did not, because again, I think what happened is when we were focusing so much on Garifta and corporate sponsors was just, and then when it came to the Bahamas games, and then we move a little slow. And so, at this games, the government will take the brunt of the cost. But at the end of the day, is our hope that definitely, I can tell you this, after these games, I've had meeting with a few corporate sponsors this week, and I've met with CEOs of these organizations, because they're seeing what this ministry is doing as it relates to youth sports and culture and want to be a part. So years in advance from now, we are beginning to put calendars of events in place where these corporate sponsors want to get on board. So as we start the process and putting forward a product, and now the product is something that everyone wants to be a part of, the government will pay less as we move forward in the future.
Kelsey, what was it like for you having to manage, help to manage all of this? Because of course, you got to keep your eye on the people's money at all times. But you have a boss who wants, she gave me that look. You have a boss who wants the best in class. What was it like trying to balance all of that?
Balancing, it was like walking a tightrope. Like Minister would have alluded, we had more than 1,000 vendors. So I was happy to see out of the 1,000 vendors, we had about 300 to 400 smaller vendors.
Wow.
So the economic impact on the smaller scale may go unnoticed. But I'm happy that we have the opportunity now to speak about that they actually made a contribution to the games as well. They benefited. At every venue, there were more like about 5 or 10 vendors who would have actually made some money from it. In terms of the budget, everybody wanted a big show. So we had to...
Always.
Like in Camperdown, when you hold the reins and say, hold on, Aussie, hold on. So we had to reel them back in and say, this is the reality of it.
Sure.
Right? We understand that you're used to competing for a stipend here and there, but let's compete for pride. Let's compete for country. Let's take the money away, and let's all do it for Bahamas. And when we saw that, a number of athletes and coaches, they bought into it.
Okay.
So we moved away from financial to a sense of Bahamian pride. And that will always be the key and the winning factor in these games.
Oh, fantastic. And we even talked about coming on the show, prior to coming on, that there was an ice shortage at one point.
Yes.
You were using so much ice.
We had 4 ice boxes from Jubilee, and every 4 to 5 hours, Jubilee would bring us about 60 extra large bags of ice. And when that ran out, thank you so much, Fusion. Fusion, I cannot thank you enough for the part that you've played. We had to go to Fusion, and Fusion said, hold on now, y'all taking too much ice. We still have movies.
We still got to show movies. A cold soda when they come.
So one morning, we had 2 vans parked outside on Nassau Street by Super Wash, just plugging in dollars because we needed ice. The first day of baseball, I got a call. Teddy, the president, actually the general secretary, called me. Hey, Kels, we need ice. I said, Daddy, I just dropped you 10 bags. Oh, no, that ain't gonna work. Be on turf, we need more ice. They used 70 cases of water.
Wow.
16-ounce Chelsea's Choice water, 70 cases, and 15 extra large bags of ice. 6 containers of Gatorade. One day.
So that helps
us.
us.
Heat was on.
I think that's what the heat was on, but I can say this. I don't know if there's any event that we would have seen such a widespread economic impact on the small man than we would have seen since the Bahama Games. And so for those who are financially sound-minded, when you look at the returns on the investment spent, the human capital, you would then have a great appreciation for the dollar spent when we finally get that final figure. We could be less than 8, but I'm just,
I would also, and we're going to wrap up on this, I'm just going to say that I think we talk about the financial impact, but if you're able to show as well in numbers what the financial impact would have been on the economy in that period, it would, I think, help to soften the blow a bit for people. And they would understand that it's not just, you sort of threw $8 million out the window, but people benefited from it. So just a bit of sage advice there, hopefully. So that's a good point, though, for us to take another break. When we come back, our last segment of On the Record, we're talking about the Bahamas Games. Lots more to get to. Stay close. This is our final segment of the night as we talk about the 2023 Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games with our guest, Minister Mario Boleg, and Director of Sports at the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Kelsey Sills. Folks, as we went into the break, we were talking about what this all costs, the economics of it, the large price tag that's still being calculated. But I want to take an opportunity to talk about some of the other things that happened around the actual event. So as the athletes are competing, coaches are coaching, spectators are enjoying, there are lots of things going on to make this happen. And we touched just on the ice aspect, but how many other services did you have to engage in order to make these games successful?
We call them the moving parts. So we'll start from the bus, the transportations. We did not use any of the bigger transportation companies. We used some of the smaller bus owners. So that was an economic impact there. We would have used a number of the doctors and nurses from around the hospitals. So that was another major impact. All of the hospitals, walk-in clinic, Oak Tree Medical, Doctors Hospital, PMH, everyone was used. We did have a number of injuries, and I want to thank those medical persons who went in, did not hesitate, and treated those athletes. Even in a rowdy crowd, they were there and they acted professional all the time.
Imagine that, Bahamians in a rowdy crowd. Go on.
So, from the small mom and pop vendors, the food vendors, like I mentioned when we were off air, in order for me to feed 2,500 persons, I would have had to go to a food store to buy those products. So the food stores benefited. In order for me to feed 2,500 persons as a chef, I have to hire other persons to help me cook. So for 10 days, we would have employed at least 2,000 persons. And my numbers may be a little off, but if you look at everything, the security companies, everyone.
Because if you think about it, the police and defense force are now busy with independence as well.
And
but
all
you've
the
got
other
to
activities.
You've got to keep these venues safe.
And all of the venues had we had about 6 securities companies with a manpower of 30 each. And every venue you went to, you would have seen their presence and felt their presence. So they were there. And then you look at each facility venue had to have its own cleaning company. So we had to hire smaller cleaning companies also to get this job done. So we did what the Prime Minister always tells me to do, make sure that we spread it out to the small man. And that's why I feel it's the economic impact of the smaller companies and small man on the street was able to benefit greatly from this. I tell you, 1 or 2 cleaning companies said they had to hire about 8 to 10 persons extra on their staff just to get this done because they had other things to do also. And so it proved that Kelsey said about 2,000 might have been much more persons that would have been hired within in that week of the games being played.
What are some of the teachable moments of these games? You had some success stories, but obviously, as with anything, you would have hit some roadblocks. But from both of you, what are some of your personal teachable moments that you thought, okay, well, this is something that we're definitely going to do differently next time?
I'm happy that we have the template in place. As long as you have the template in place, you'll be able to move better. Because we weren't able to host the games for more than 15, 20 years, we had to reinvent the wheel. When we last hosted the games, we didn't have all of the technology, everything like that. And before I continue on, I must congratulate all of the media houses, because at this Bahamas Games, it was united media collaboration.
Sure.
Where you would have seen your face on a ZNS product or a ZNS personality on a cable. And that shows how important the games were, the unification.
We really were unified as a media group to cover all of the venues.
And that's what was needed.
Sure.
You needed to be able not only to bridge the gap in terms of sports, but in every aspect to pull off the games. So now I said we have the template in place. All of the little hiccups, the things like that, like insurance. We got the insurance kind of late, right? But the insurance still kicked in, thankfully, because we did have some injuries. So persons are able to benefit, and they were able to be treated at some of the premier hospitals. The feeding, we now know that we may need 2 feeding stations instead of GHS. Some persons wanted their meals to be brought to them because they couldn't leave competition. So now we may be able to hire more vendors to stay in place instead of saying you're feeding 2,500 persons at a general location. Now you may only have to feed 1,000 and then just bring the meals to other persons. So there are a number of things that we were able to learn. We want to increase the amount of disciplines, like Minister would have said. Judo is a big one. We've had persons compete on the Commonwealth Games at that high level. So we have to be able now to diversify, broaden our horizons. And the only way we can do that is to go back to the drawing board and see where we went wrong, where we went right. We had minimum wrongs and a whole lot of right. Because even when we had the wrongs, we were able to quickly mobilize and turn them into right.
It's been 20 plus years.
Yes.
You say you want
and
to
the cell
start,
phones were not there. You had to go there.
Yeah.
And you know, Jerome, the 20 plus years ago, the athletes stayed at Government High.
Yes.
In the classrooms, in bunk beds.
Really?
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that too was an achievement.
I forgot.
And so, you know,
I forgot
you
about
could
that.
not have taken the athletes in the day and time and tell them we must buy bunk beds and fans and all this heat and put them in the classroom.
It's too hot,
And so, you know, like they say, those who were there in the past said, man, we in a hotel now.
Yeah.
You know, and so they really enjoyed it. And those who came from the Family Islands really enjoyed it. But back to the media coverage, everyone in the Family Island who I would have spoken to was happy that they were able to change channels and watch whatever discipline they wanted to watch. And so those in the Family Islands also felt that they were not left out, even though they were not here. And it felt like they were here because they were in the front of the TV cheering on their relatives and friends and families who were here representing their island of choice.
And I have to tell you, thank you for, you know, giving us an opportunity to be a part of it, and being able to, and, you know, and also, you know, being able to offer that variety, because you were able to switch between channels, because a lot of times there were games going on simultaneously.
And you wanted to see both.
Yeah, and so people were able.
One thing I'm proud of is to know that the facilities, I would have competed at the last, not the recent, the last games, right? And the caliber of facilities that we have in this country, and I know a number of persons always say, we have this big Andre Rogers Stadium, it's just there, nobody's using it. But when you go in there and you look at the other Caribbean countries, a Jamaica, a powerhouse in track and field, the Bahamas is the only country in this region that can boast of having 2 certified tracks right next door. Any other Caribbean country, you have to be bused, and some places in the world. This makes it the best ideal location to host major sporting events, because all an athlete has to do is walk from one track to the next instead of being bused to actually compete.
I'd be remiss, right behind you is that shot of sailing, Minister. I want to talk about sailing, and you know, it's now and again, thanks to this government for making it the national sport as it should be. But you know, you talked about the fact that sailors said, "Hey, we ain't sailing Andres, we come into Nassau." But you know, again, here is a sport that really looks to be now on the rise once again.
Yes.
And you look at the games as an example of that.
Yeah, the idea is to take the sport back to the Olympic level. It's an Olympic sport, and now that we made it our national sport, myself along with the Minister of Education and Agriculture, Clay Sweeting, and Glennis Anna Martin, now wants to devise a plan that where we can have the development of the sailing, like you can see the Opti sailing and the Sunfish sailing, the younger sailors, to be able to train and go in events that will help qualify them to get to the world level of qualifying for the Olympics. You know, you look at Stephen Knowles, who is the master of sailing right now. That's why Long Island men the A, B, and C category. But you know, we have to find ways while the younger ones are up and coming, and those ones who are great now. You know, when the Raleigh Gray would teach Stephen Knowles them how to sail, to be able to fill the shoe of the Cecil Cook and Sir David Knowles. And I would like to see us one day not only watching track and field winning the golds, but be back in sailing as our national sport, and proud for it to be our national sport and be proven around the world.
I know there
was
was
some of the best sailors.
I know there was a lot of hot competition, pardon the pun, in the pool. Swimming continues
Oh, yes.
to be, you know, that bright light that's continuing to shine.
Yeah, and Grand Bahama seems to be the dominant one when it came to. That's how come they sprint out up front. They dominated.
All
in the
my
pools.
Grand Bahama reporters in the background making noise. Now I got
I
to deal
know
with
making
them.
them. Yeah, I got a couple of texts with two about Grand Bahama winning. You know, teasing me. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you know, and this is the reason why two reasons we wanted to invest in the Olympic-sized swimming pool inside Grand Bahama. We believe that Grand Bahama has developed some of the best swimmers over the past few years. We believe that we go with the theme, if you build it, they will come. We believe that Grand Bahama has no tourist attraction at this present moment, and we believe if we put a facility such as that there on the island of Grand Bahama and try to make it the first indoor swimming pool where we would attract persons from around the world that wants to come in and utilize that pool. It'll actually be the first and only one in the Caribbean. So we have to be unique when we talk about doing these things, and makes it an attraction for that island.
What the Bahamas can brag about is, in 2008 at the Olympics, we had about 6 to 8 disciplines competing at that high level. Right now we only have track and swimming, but these games prove that we are still on that projected path to have the return of boxing. Remember, we had Toriano in boxing.
Walk down memory lane, yes.
Mark Knowles and Devin Mullings in tennis. So we are on that projected path because of these games. We may not be able to do it in 2024 because the window is open, but they would have had already been able to get their points in certain disciplines. A number of them don't have it. We have a LaRon, I think his last name is Roll, one of the top junior archers in the country. I mean, ranked about 100 in the world at this point in time. 17, 18.
Yeah.
Just
finished government.
Just finished.
St. John's High School.
And we have persons in judo. So we are on the projected path, not for 2024, but probably 2028 to see a good return at the Olympic Games.
Which brings me to that question. Minister, I know you've been focused and laser focused on the development of sports and development through the country. Is this now, are we going to see more of these games, even in the islands, not Bahamas games per se, but are we going to see more competitions? You talked about, the pool in Grand Bahama, but are we going to see more of these islands? Because there was a time when, Eleuthera, for instance, dominated in basketball and softball, and they had powerhouse teams. And people went to these islands to watch them compete.
What I want to do is, I haven't discussed with my director yet, but the plan is to have regional games. And we want to have the Central Bahama Games, the Northern Bahamas, and the Southern Bahama Games.
Kelsey, you ready?
And so, and the idea is to try and have those games the year before the Bahama Games, which will give that boost of excitement again, readying up for those teams to prepare themselves and still also find those diamonds in the rough and new talent to prepare themselves to be a part of your Bahama Games. And so definitely I'm going to push with my colleagues and my staff at the ministry that we can help organize these regional games. And these regional games must be in that region. So we need to prepare those facilities in the south. So those islands in the south stay in the south and compete. And the Prime Minister has, indicated to me that he wants to ensure that we get at least 5 new tracks placed in the country. And so strategically, if that's one of my plans, we need to make sure there is a track up to standard in the south. We know we got one in the north in Grand Bahama, but you know, you got Bimini and Abaco and all those that need track too. You don't want to just host everything in Grand Bahama, but you want to give Abaco a chance, Bimini a chance to be able to host these events.
A reminder that Stephen Gardner came out of Abaco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Sabbath defines.
yeah.
Let's go back to history.
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
Majority of our elite athletes
came out of the family island.
Moores Island actually is one of the areas where we intend to put a track.
I've been there, and that program they have in Moores Island is phenomenal.
Yep.
And certainly is deserving of that. Any closing remarks? We're about to wrap up. Kelsey, I'll start with you. Minister, I'll give you final words. Any closing remarks, particularly looking ahead?
What I don't want us to do as a country is lose momentum. We've already established that we can do these things. Now, I charge all the sports councils, the various federations to go out there, go on the heels of these games, and do what is needed to promote your sport, to promote the family islands. What I've realized sitting in the chair now, a number of the federations, they are New Providence centric. So if they are able to branch out now and develop that Michael constituency, like Minister Wood said, if we are able to establish now, my work when it comes to actually putting on these regional games for the Bahamas will be easy, and then the Bahamas games.
I love it. Minister.
And I would like to say, first of all, thanks to all the stakeholders and all the individuals who took part in the Bahama Games and make it success. The police, the defense force, the security officers, the doctors, the nurses, the cleaners, the athletes, of course, and officials at large who made sure that, and the government who would have put in their investment in these games. And I say to the Bahamas, if you enjoyed those games, people of the Bahamas, we will be bringing them back. Continue to give us your support. When I say us, these athletes, they need your support. And as I springboard from what Kelsey would have said, it's very important that all of these federations goes to the family islands and develop associations, because the associations and the federations which makes jobs much easier for us to develop these athletes.
Lots of good advice. Thank you very much. And I love the regional games like in Long Island.
You in shape? You in shape to do anything?
Don't worry about that. I got time. Thank you so much, Minister Bola. Kelsey, it was our pleasure hosting you here on the record. To all that made the Bahamas Golden Jubilee Games a success this year, we would love to extend our congratulations to you, the planning committee, sponsors, parents, and of course the athletes, and to the RTV team led by our Jahali Swan as the official broadcaster, or one of the official broadcasters for this year's games. Congratulations to you all. To our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you join us again next week as we discuss topics that directly affect the lives of Bahamians. Until then, see you next week. Take care.